All right. Second Chronicles. Now go to chapter 22. Second Chronicles 22, verse 1. And the inhabitants of Jerusalem made Ahaziah, his youngest son, king in his stead. For the band of men that came from the Arabians to the camp had slain all the eldest. So Ahaziah, the son of Joram, king of Judah, reigned. 42 years old was Ahaziah when he began to reign, and he reigned 1 year in Jerusalem. His mother's name also was Athaliah, the daughter of Omri. Yes, we talked about Omri this morning. Go to see the parallel passage in 1 Kings 8, or 2 Kings 8. 2 Kings 8. 2 Kings 8, verse 26. Now, you might have to compare these passages if your memory is as good as mine. He says, 2 Kings 8, verse 26. 22 years old was Ahaziah when he began to reign, and he reigned 1 year in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Athaliah, the daughter of Omri, king of Israel. Notice any differences? Well, you don't remember that one right either. Go back to 2 Chronicles 22, verse 2, 42 years. So there's a difference here. Which is it? 42 years or 22? So which was it? His dad died when he was 32. He started reigning when he was 42. And
they were joint together.
Well, one has him older than his father. So we've got a real issue here. Go to Matthew 1. Well, in Matthew 1, you lose 4 kings. So we got to figure this thing out. It's a standard. I don't know. Maybe you do. I've never seen that error, supposed error. But I guess you could have. Usually these things come about because someone has told you there's an error in the Bible, and they got it from somebody else who told them there was a problem with the Bible. They weren't paying attention enough when they read through it. I've read through it more than 100 times and paid attention, and I never saw it. That doesn't mean somebody can't see it. It just means that more than likely a scoffer had found something, and they're using this as their proof text to deny God. So God will give anybody who wants to scoff at him a reason to do it. If you have a bad heart, then he'll just help you harden your heart, just like he did with Pharaoh. Let's find an answer for this. Ahaziah is anointed to be king of Judah at the age of 22 years old. But he does not sit down on the throne until he's 42 years old. Now, I didn't give you any Bible for that. I just gave you an answer. I'm going to give you more Bible than you want. But let me just give you the answer right up front. No. That is a possibility. So when somebody has a complicated question like that, just say, well, couldn't he have been anointed at one point and not sat down until the other point? Sure. David. How about Jesus Christ? 1900 years plus before he sits down to rule and reign, but yet anointed at his baptism. Okay, there's an anointing and not a reigning until later. So that's possible. Matter of fact, you find it with David in the Old Testament. He's anointed, but then he doesn't get to reign. Then his reign is halted. He only gets to reign in Hebron. Then he gets to reign in over all the tribes. Saul even himself says, I know God's anointed you to be king. Jonathan says, you're going to be king, and even my father knows it. Okay, so just being anointed and made king does not mean you actually rule as king yet, sitting on a throne. So that's the case we have here. But there's a whole lot more to it. Ahaziah is said to be the son of Jehoshaphat. 2 Chronicles, look at 22, verse 9. He's the son of Jehoshaphat. That's what we saw in 22:9. Now let's find his kingdom. 2 Chronicles 21:2. And he had brethren, the sons of Jehoshaphat. And here's where our guy's going to show up. I'm going to see if you're paying attention. Look through those names. I'm not going to read them to you because I'm going to read them all wrong. But read those names and see if anything stands out to you. Two kids have the same name. Doesn't necessarily mean they had the same mom. You find that a lot in the Old Testament. They had many wives and concubines and I guess a limited number of names. Thank goodness. Anyway, we get through those names and he says, all these were the sons of Jehoshaphat, king of Israel. How is he the king of Israel? But he's the king of Judah. Okay, interesting things in here. In addition to being the son of Jehoshaphat, Joram is Ahaziah's father and father-in-law to Ahab. Okay, a lot of names here. It's going to confuse you. 1 Kings 22. 1 Kings 22:2. This is, you can find this answer in Ruckman's problem text. And I changed it a little bit and add a few things to it, but basically that's the same. 1 Kings 22:2. And it came to pass in the 3rd year that Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, which is it, Israel or Judah? Absolutely. Came down to the king of Israel. I thought he was the king of Israel. Yes. Look at 2 Kings 8:24. And Joram slept with his fathers and was buried with his fathers in the city of David. Okay, if he's buried in the city of David, where's that? That's Judah. And Ahaziah, his son, reigned in his stead. I thought he was the son of Jehoshaphat. Finding any problems? We got some issues, don't we? Yes. 2 Kings 8, verse 27. I'm going to get all the problems out of the way up front. I want you good and confused, and then we'll clear it up. 2 Kings 8:27. And he walked in the way of the house of Ahab, and did evil in the sight of the Lord, as did the house of Ahab, for he was the son-in-law of the house of Ahab. Now, I think the wording is interesting. I didn't see anybody say this, but it doesn't say he was the son-in-law of Ahab. It says he was the son-in-law of the house of Ahab. So that could mean a distant relative. So how does Ahaziah become a son-in-law to the house of Ahab? When he married Ziba, we're going to find this, of Beersheba. He didn't marry Ahab's daughter or Omri's daughter that would make him son. 2 Chronicles 24:1. And Joash was 7 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 40 years in Jerusalem. Here's the mom. Here's the woman. And his mother's name also was Ziba of Beersheba. That's verse 1. 2 Chronicles 24:1. Okay, that's not related to the house of Ahab. But how are we making him a son-in-law to the house of Ahab? Do this. If somebody gives you this problem of
call John.
Yeah, that's right. If somebody gives you this problem of he was 22 versus 42, you can leave a message. And I still won't return. Yeah, 20. You can, if they say he was 22 here and he was 42 here, you got a problem. Say, no, that ain't the problem. There's 5 more problems before you got to that one.
That's right.
How did you miss those?
That's true. That's true.
2 Chronicles 24:1. His mother was Ziba of Beersheba. Look at 1 Kings 22. 1 Kings 22. Write them both down. Read from one all the way to the next one. 1 Kings 22:26. This is Ahab and Jehoshaphat are trying to get together and they're going to go to war. And Jehoshaphat says, well, I sure would like somebody besides Joel Osteen and his staff to be giving us some answers on whether or not we should do this. And he says, well, there is one other guy, but he's a kook. He's one of those Bible thumpers, and I don't like him. He always speaks mean to me. And so he gives his prophecy, and the king didn't like it. Of course, he knew he wasn't going to like it. And so here's what he says about him. 1 Kings 22, verse 26. And the king of Israel said, take Micaiah and carry him back into Ammon, the governor of the city, and to Joash, the king's son. Okay, so here's the king in the north with the king of Judah, the south. They're both together when they shouldn't have been together to begin with. And he says, take him to the son of the king and lock him up there. Verse 28. And Micaiah said, if thou return at all in peace, the Lord hath not spoken by me. And he said, hearken, O people, every one of you. Verse 34. And a certain man drew a bow at a venture and smote the king of Israel between the joints of the harness. Who's the king of Israel?
Ahab.
Well, we've seen it be Ahab. We've seen it be Jehoshaphat. We're going to find in this chapter it's Ahab. Wherefore he said unto the driver of the chariot, turn thine hand and carry me out of the host, for I am wounded. Verse 37. So the king died and was brought to Samaria, and they buried him in Samaria. Okay, Samaria is the city that Omri, his father, set up to be the capital, the king's palace. 2 Chronicles 24. 2 Chronicles 24:1. Joash was 7 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 40 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name also was Ziba of Beersheba. So this is who Micaiah's got to go hang out with. Now, there's a reason for all of this. Ahaziah has given birth to Joash before he sat down on the throne of Judah, obviously. However, they've got a king. They've got a king. His name is Jehoshaphat. But Jehoshaphat is said not only to be the king in Judah, but also the king in Israel. Something's going on here where Jehoshaphat has got a foot in both kingdoms. And if you read, you'll find out that Jehoshaphat is a pushover. He's wanting to make nice with Ahab. That's not the way we want to. We don't want a president who wants to kowtow to every other dignitary. No, we want them to be strong and firm, and y'all bow to me and give me what I want. Well, Jehoshaphat was the other way. He's like, I'm just like you are. My people are just like yours, and my horses are just like yours, and I'll bleed when I get killed just like you. And that's what he does. Well, there's a reason for this. The reason is we don't see it right all at once, but you'll find it. Omri has set this thing up, the father of Ahab. The father of Ahab wants to control not only the north, but the south as well. And he's got a plan in place where he'll have a king on both thrones. Then he'll have control of all of it. Ooh, just like the devil, isn't it? Ahaziah is giving birth there to Joash. Ahab was killed, and then a new Ahaziah took over the throne of Israel. After Ahab, an Ahaziah that is not the one that we're having a problem with. This is a new one. That's the other thing you got to watch out for in the Bible. This is not the one whose mother and whose mother was the woman from, what did it start with a B? Beersheba, from Beersheba. Mm-hmm. 2 Chronicles 22:9. 2 Chronicles 22:9. And he sought Ahaziah, and they caught him, for he was hid in Samaria, and they brought him to Jehu, and when he had slain him, they buried him. Remember, this is when they're getting rid of all of the... Jehu wanted to wipe out the house of who? Ahab in Israel, right? So this guy is from Ahab. He says, because, said they, he is the son of Jehoshaphat, who sought the Lord with all his heart. You see an issue here? Jehu comes in, says, kill him. Brought him to Jehu, and when he had slain him, they buried him. Because, said they, he is the son of Jehoshaphat, who sought the Lord with all his heart. So the house of Ahaziah, had no power to keep still the kingdom. So this Ahaziah is from Jehoshaphat, somehow related, but he's also related to Ahab, and that's why Jehu is wiping him out. We've got a crossover of bloodlines in the Bible. 2 Chronicles 22:9. You have to move fast with me because I'm going to keep flying. 2 Chronicles 21. 2 Chronicles 21, verse 2. 21:2. And he had brethren, the sons of Jehoshaphat, Azariah, and that guy, and Zechariah, and Azariah, and Mishael, and Shaphathiah. All these were sons of Jehoshaphat, king of Israel. Now, does this mean that he had children when he went up there to see Ahab? Probably. Something's going on where Omri set this thing in motion and told Ahab, hey, look, we're going to capture all the Hebrews. I want the north and the south. Same thing Balaam did. Here's the way to get them. Have them intermarry and mix. That's why the commandment in the Old Testament was you had to marry within your tribe. If they'd been obeying that, none of this mess would have happened. But now it's all mixed up. Remember, they didn't have any dedicated kings in the north because God hadn't declared this line will be king up north. I mean, he did for one man. So the south is the house of David and the line of the tribe of Judah, not up north. So up north, they can take, if they've got the guts to do it, they can take the throne. And he says, we're not going to be content with just up here. We're going to take the south too. So obviously Ahaziah was not Joram's literal son. He was intended to be put on the southern throne of Judah many years before he finally got there. His mother, Athaliah, we've seen that name. You know Athaliah. She's no good. She was queen. And she was such a sweetie that she killed all her children to be sure nobody competed with her for the throne, except for one, right? She couldn't find that one. They wanted to kill him, or she wanted to kill him too. So Athaliah. Now, who's this Athaliah character? Do you know who Athaliah is? Do you know her relation? No? She's related, but not exactly. Yes. Ahab's sister. Ahab's sister. 1 Kings 16, 29. Yeah, ornery. Yeah, that's right. 1 Kings 16:29. In the 38th year of Asa, king of Judah, began Ahab the son of Omri to reign over Israel. And Ahab the son of Omri reigned over Israel and Samaria 22 years. So he gets a good longevity. And he's got time, and he's got the know-how, more than likely from his father, who is just like he. You find of both of these men, it's said they were more wicked than all the kings that came before them. So if Omri was more wicked than all the kings before him, and he taught all his stuff to his son, now his son can heighten the sin. And now it's said of his son, he's more wicked than all that came before him. They've got a program in place, and they're working it. 2 Chronicles 18. 2 Chronicles 18, verse 1. 2 Chronicles 18:1. Now Jehoshaphat had riches and honor and abundance. Well, then just stop there. Enjoy it. But he couldn't. That's the problem with popularity and money. It's never enough. You want to heighten it. And so he does. Here's how he does it. It goes the other way, though. Riches and honor and abundance, and joined affinity with Ahab. Affinity. What's affinity? That's some kind of car. Huh?
That's infinite.
Oh, infinite. Affinity. That's a derivative of the word affection. Now, it's more than just an alliance. It's an affinity. Correct? Well, there's more than the opposite of that. It's a love relation. It's a love connection. He's got Ahab's putting on a dating program up here. He is. And that's how Jehoshaphat can be king of the north and the south, because he's having children by Athaliah. And she's having children by the king in the south. Got a real mess going on. Always been that way. 2 Chronicles 21:1. Now Jehoshaphat slept with his fathers and was buried with his fathers in the city of David. And Joram, his son, reigned in his stead. Okay, so that's his son now. But sometimes he's said to be son-in-law. The only way you can be a son-in-law is by marrying one of Ahab's daughters or granddaughters. Sometimes it goes that way. But it didn't say son-in-law of Ahab. It says of the house. So all it takes is somebody in the house of Ahab. You know, Ahab had 70 sons that Jehu killed when he came to throne. That's right. Therefore, Ahab had more than Jezebel to wife. In Revelation, we find out one of the problems God has with Jezebel is part of the worship service is fornication. There is something going on in Ahab's house that ain't holy. Look at second, let's see. Oh, I've got so much here. I don't know. So if that's so, if we've got intermixing and all this stuff going on, then we've got a good reason for when you get to Matthew, they've lost 4 kings. Because God says, I don't want that wickedness in my line. And he takes them out. Now, that's not the only places that there's names taken out, but that's another lesson. Look at Matthew 22:45. All right, when you find that, go back to Matthew 1. We're going to cover the whole Bible. You know, you really do need to... What the problem with man is this. We sit down to read, and more than likely, you're going to read one chapter. So that's what, 20, 30 verses? Well, there's 31,000 of them in here. How long is it going to take you to get through that? And how much of it are you going to remember by the time you get to the end of it? Not much. You need to go through it slow and you need to go through it fast. It doesn't hurt, and I like doing this, to listen through the Bible, because that gives you a big picture of everything that's going on. You remember more pieces of it all at once. Now, you won't pick up on the finer details. That's why you put the Bible in your lap and you read it slowly. But you need both. So here we got the beginning and the end of the book of Matthew. Matthew 1:1, it says, the book of the generations of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Now, we're going to find out how God talks. The book talks differently than you and I do. When it says son, it doesn't mean it the way we mean it. Let me ask you something. Was David the son of Abraham? Not quite. Was Jesus the son of David? Not as a direct descendant, correct? That's right. Many, many greats. But God says it's in the same line, so you can call it a son. Matthew 22:45. This is not just a current issue. This was a ancient problem too. Jesus uses this very issue to catch the scribes and the Pharisees. Matthew 22:45. If David then calleth him Lord, how is he his son?
That's right.
This is not something that the ancients knew and we don't. No, the ancients didn't understand it either. And there's a lot of things in there. If you don't learn to take it by faith and say, God said it, I believe it, or I'll change the way I think about it, you'll be on the wrong side. And Jesus Christ used it right there. That's the same way we think. In the Bible, a son can be a son-in-law. It can be a many times many great grandson, or it can be an adopted son. You'll remember what Saul says to David when David catches him in the cave. He says, is that the voice of my son David? When he's trying to kiss up to him and say, don't kill me. Right? Yeah. Yes. Anybody in the same family, yeah. Luke, it can be an adopted son. This is an odd one. Luke 3, verse 23. And Jesus himself began to be about 30 years of age, being as was supposed the son of Joseph, which was the son of Heli. We make a big deal about this, and we say it does not say that Jesus was the son of Joseph. However, he was the adopted son of Joseph. There's no doubt about it. Joseph was taking care of him. One night, Joseph has some bad pizza, goes to bed too late, and he has a dream. Now, this, I'm joking. The Holy Spirit engineered this and says, get out of town. They're coming to get you. He tells Mary and Jesus, y'all pack it up, we're heading out. And they leave. Okay, that's a father taking care of his family. Okay, so Jesus was the stepson, or the, the adopted son of Joseph. So that can be called a son. He says there was supposed. That is, everybody would expect that, think that. Look at it in 1 Samuel 24. You don't have to turn there. I already told you about it. I'll read it to you. And it came to pass when David made an end of speaking these words to Saul, that Saul said, is this thy voice, my son David? I always get such a kick out of that. Here's the great mighty king who's on a mission to chop off the head of David. And David goes out there and gives him a mini skirt. And he says, do another turn on the runway for us, Saul. and Saul says, aren't you my son? You know, my favorite boy in the family. So there it could be a family member. One way of showing affection was to call someone a son. The kids do it nowadays. I can't stand it when they do it. In school, none of them have any real moms and dads. So they make family members of their classmates. And they come up with a phony family. Oh, yeah. Yeah, oh, yeah. In school, they'll call so-and-so my mom or so-and-so my sister or my brother or whatever. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And then grandfathers call young people.
And the other thing I can't stand is this godmother, godfather. If you've got God for your father, that's the godfather. I wouldn't replace that with anybody. Don't dare. He says, if my mother and my father forsake me, then the Lord will take me up. He's both mother and father. That's God, mother and God, father. You better not give that title to anybody else. Anyway, we've got off the lesson now. Look at Leviticus 18. Leviticus 18:8. Leviticus 18:8. He says, the nakedness of thy father's wife shalt thou not uncover. This is thy father's nakedness. Therefore, all this incest and swapping back and forth that Ahab and Omri have cooked up in order to control the kingdom is forbidden by the law. Therefore, God's not going to allow it in his line. That's why in Matthew, the boys get cut out. But it's more than just the one offender that gets cut out. When one man messed up, he cut out the whole line. Now, the whole line, you can go through each individual one and you can find the wickedness and horrible things that they were doing that justified God taking a pen to them. However, we're going to find some interesting stuff. Of course, here's the chronological order of the kings that should have been in the line of Christ. Jehoshaphat, that's 2 Chronicles 21:1. Joram, 2 Chronicles 21:1. Ahaziah, 2 Chronicles 22:1. Joash, 2 Chronicles 24:1. Amaziah, 2 Chronicles 25:1. And Uzziah, 2 Chronicles 26:1. But in Matthew, it skips from Joram to Uzziah. So the question is, why? Why are 3 kings left out? It's 3, not 4. I told you wrong. Ahaziah is not a direct descendant of the kings of Judah. He's not the son of Joram. His mother was Joram's mother-in-law in 2 Chronicles 22:9 and 10. And Joram was married to the so-called daughter of Ahab. Don't get those two mixed up. But this was not Ahab's daughter. It was Ahab's sister, and we've seen that. Therefore, God says this wickedness won't be connected with my son, Jesus Christ. Athaliah is the daughter of Omri, the sister of Ahab, and obviously part of the worship service that the queen mother was over. You know who the queen mother was? That's Hillary. How did I get her name mixed up? That's Jezebel. Remember, Jezebel was the one who was in charge of the religious worshipers of Baal. It was her prophets. And when Elijah goes in there and lops their head off, she takes it personal. Says, I'll come back and get you. Okay, so she's running the show. This is her religion. And we've seen, you'll find it in Revelation, that Jezebel has a religion that is connected with fornication as part of the worship service. So that's what was going on with that worship service there. And therefore, if you've got fornication going on in the worship service, you've got illegitimate children. Exodus 34. Exodus 34, verse 7. Exodus 34:7. Now, I've done a whole lesson on this verse because the charismatics get it wrong. However, I'm going to show you there is a tiny bit of truth in it. Exodus 34:7, keeping mercy for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin. And that will by no means clear the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children and upon the children's children, unto the third and fourth generations. Just like we've seen, the kings to the third and fourth generation are taken out. Now, he says, this is not about God being mean and saying, I'm going to stay mad for 4 generations. That's the way the charismatics take it. The charismatics will say, I have a generational curse on me. Well, the world does the same thing. They say, I have ADHD and I've got dyslexia and, I got an inner ear infection. Well, I got a hangnail the other day. Qualify me for food stamps too. Now, this is what he's doing in this verse. He says it's a positive thing. Keeping mercy, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin. Now, he says everybody is getting a chance because he says, I'm visiting. If he shows up, that's an opportunity to repent. Anybody in the Bible who ever saw God fell on their face and repented, or else he made them crispy critters. A bastard shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord, even to his 10th generation shall he not enter into the congregation of the Lord. Well, they didn't really have any congregations of the Lord up north anyway. They had some phony ones. Look down at verse 8.
It's not 30.
Did I tell you wrong? It's Deuteronomy 23. 23. That's it. Yeah. Deuteronomy 23:8.
Tell Ken there's dyslexia.
Oh, I do have it.
I'll tell Ken. Because it's been passed on.
Oh, yeah. Been visited to the second, third generation. Deuteronomy 23, verse 2 we covered. Now we're in verse 8. The children that are begotten of them shall enter into the congregation of the Lord in their third generation. So there's that skip right to 3. He says after 3, then we'll hit the reset button. And now if you're messing up again, then it starts all over. Ahaziah is Joram's literal son. Or not Joram's literal son. He's a stepson or son-in-law, could be, or even an adopted quote-unquote son. He's Omri's project in order to get a king to run both that will answer to him. So when it says 42 years old was Ahaziah when he began to reign, and he reigned over Israel, over Judah, or reigned 1 year in Judah, then we know that it took him that long to be able to sit down on the throne. If you've got 2 ages, obviously the younger age is when they declared the programs in effect. And when he actually got it is when it actually transpired. You do the same thing when you buy something nowadays. You ask somebody, nowadays you ask them if they own a car. You can ask them if they own anything now. It's all on loans. And they'll say they do, but they don't. You say, okay, show me the title. They don't own it. Now they've signed some paperwork saying the deal's in process, and they think they own it. Matter of fact, the cop will come up and say, whose car is it? They'll say, it's mine. Get tag, title, and license and all that stuff, registration. Well, you can have it registered in your name, but it's not yours until the bank hands you the title. That's the same thing going on with these kings. Paperwork has been done. However, they ain't sat down and claimed it yet. All right, so that's basically the answer.
So this side is a bunch of incest and all of that.
Both sides.
But
Yeah.
it's similar to David being anointed younger and then finally getting to the throne. When he's
Well, that's how you can have a kingship that spans a great period of time. He was made king, but not gotten the throne. So he could be king both places, but not sat down. Go to somewhere else in the Bible. Go to Exodus 32. Exodus 32:33.
Somewhere.
Mm-hmm. That's right. He says, whosoever has sinned against me, him will I blot out of my book. That's taking names out. That's Exodus 32:33. Now, I'm going to bring this up and cover this because it's a misunderstood concept. There's a difference in the New Testament and the Old Testament. Look at Psalm 69. Psalm 69, verse 28. Psalm 69:28. I keep forgetting this is not the old days where I could go 2 hours. Psalm 69, verse 28. He talks about blotting out of the book of what? The living. That's a different phrase than you're used to. The book of the living. No, well, yeah, he took them out of the book of the living. So that book called the book of the living was every human being that was born.
That's right.
It's a different kind of book than what we know about now. Psalm 109, verse 13. Psalm 109, verse 13. There he's talking about their name be blotted out. So obviously the name is connected to whatever is a live person. And he's taken them out of his book, just like we've seen before. Psalm 139, verse 16. When he writes down in his book here, the book of the living, someone who's alive, he writes down more than just a name. We know that all your hairs are counted. Okay, so that's in the book. But here's something else that's in the book. In thy book, all my members were written. That is, if you were born, with 6 toes or 4, he wrote that down. He's got you identified. Daniel 7, verse 10. So far, it's been a singular book. Now it's changed. And the books, plural, were opened. Books. As in more than one book. So it's no longer just the book of the living. There's at least 2 books. Now, when is this taking place? In Daniel. In Daniel, that's taking place at the white throne judgment. Okay, that's past New Testament and tribulation time. So at that point, another book has been written. Let's see if we can find it. Galatians 3, verse 22. In the Old Testament, if you were born, you got written down. And then when you did something wrong, you got taken out, blotted out. However, nowadays, when a person is born, is their name written in there? Nope. You have to be born again. What he's done is the blood of Jesus Christ washed over the book of the living and counted them all dead. Galatians 3, verse 22. Galatians 3:22. But the scripture hath concluded all under sin, that the promise by faith of Jesus Christ might be given to them that believe. So now if you believe, you can go in his book. And it's no longer the book of the living. It's a different name on the book. We'll find it. Luke 10, verse 20. Luke 10:20. Rejoice because your names are written in heaven. Okay, so this is after the New Testament time period. Jesus is on earth now. So he's saying, I'm writing names in heaven. Okay, but he didn't identify the book he's putting it in. We'll find it. Philippians 4, verse 3. Philippians 4:3. He says, whose names are written in the book of life. So there's a book of life now. Not a book of the living. The book of the living was Old Testament, everything that was born into this earth. Now it's the book of life. Jesus Christ is life. If you have him, you have life. Then your name gets put in. That's Philippians 4, verse 3. The book of life shows up again, Revelation 13:5, 13:8, 17:8, 20:12, 20:15, 22:19. Look at it in Revelation 21:27. Here's a third book. The Lamb's Book of Life. Now, so I don't go any farther, I'll leave the mystery for you. Find out who's in the Lamb's Book of Life and what the difference between the Book of the Living, the Book of Life, and the Book of the Lamb's Book of Life is. Fun stuff.